It is the Chinampa system that allows everyone to have a balanced diet of corn, beans, squash, and chile. And that is, of course, when I shared with you with regards to the red beans and the origins of the red beans, there was this one tool known as the metate y mano, and you'll find that in every Mexican household today. It's the molcajete. The molcajete was used to grind vegetable matter. I called it the first American Express card. You didn't leave home without it. But really, it was a Mexican Express card. This is the basis of the Mexican experience, the mexica. Now, most importantly, when we talk about the Mexican experience, we have to appreciate that it forms the basis of all of the experiences of people from the Caribbean, Central America, and South America who are living in the United States today. What happens to the Mexican in terms of migration and immigration eventually happens to everyone else in Latin America with some modifications. Now, first and foremost in this experience is appreciating what is known as mestizaje, or the mixture of the races. Now, mestizaje is the process of change that is rooted in native traditions, blended in with European, African, and Asian expressions. Now, during the first 100 years of contact with the Western Hemisphere, Europe, Africa, and Asia will primarily send male workers to the Caribbean and the mainland. And so, in Tenochtitlan, between 1492 and 1600, what Tenochtitlan will eventually become is Mexico City. Well, Mexico City is going to get an influx of male populations. And these male populations are going to rape native women. European and African women will not arrive in significant numbers until the mid-1600s. And Asian women will not arrive until the 1800s. So the first European and African males will enter Tenochtitlan, or Mexico City, in 1519. The first Asian males will arrive in the 1530s. So by 1550, European, African, and Asian males will be mixing and intermingling with native women, and their offspring will form the basis of the working populations for the Spanish colonial empire. And this intermingling will be continuous to the present day. Historian José Vasconcelos will coin the term la raza cósmica to identify this rich heritage. This mixture is important to appreciate because in every Mexican family, one can see the racial strains that are prevalent. Whenever you encounter a Mexican family whose mother had more than 10 children, the offspring will reflect the world's sacred colors. Again, when we take a look at a Mexican family, there is the güero, the negro, the indio, the chino, and then everyone else with mixed heritage. There is the white, there is the black, there is the yellow, there is the red, and everyone else mixed in. And this is why I like to talk about getting down and getting brown. We are the brown beans. We are the frijoleros. So today's presentation is taking a look at those brown beans. Now, the Caribbean and African slavery are central to the Mexican and Latin American and Central American experience. Now let's recognize that all of the racial strains in the Mexican mestizaje experience stem from migration and immigration. And most importantly, cultural diversity characterizes the populations that will come into contact with each other once Christopher Columbus initiates the historical encounter. So when we take a look at all of these racial strains that come and arrive in central Mexico, we need to recognize that all of these racial strains had diversity within themselves. So that the Mexica Tenocha, they weren't just all Mexica, there were different groups, the Huastec, Mixtec, Tepanahue, Zapotec, and many others formed part of what became known as what the Spanish are going to call as Aztec culture. The Mexica never called themselves Aztec. It's the Spanish who come in to take over. They will rewrite the history and begin to identify the people as Aztec. Okay? It's sort of like when the United States takes over Mexico. They will not like to identify the people who are here as Mexican. They will call them Hispanic. Okay? Because after all, Mexicans get deported, not Hispanics. So keep that in mind, especially with regards to rewriting history in behalf of the conquerors. But in Spain, King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella, through contact and conquest, incorporated diverse populations into their kingdom. There were the Basques, the Castilians, the Catalans, the Cordobans, the Muslims, Jews, and Catholics. And likewise, in Africa, there were diverse populations that were practicing different kinds of religious traditions. There was Ashanti and Yoruba, Igbo, Ghana, and Mandinko. All of these traditions were incorporated into a larger Muslim trading network through contact and conquest. And then in the Philippines, in Manila was an international trading center that housed different kinds of merchants and labor forces of Chinese, Filipinos, Koreans, Japanese, Cambodians, Southeast Asians, Indians, people from Ceylon, and that's just to name a few of the different cultures. Now, in all of these systems, slavery was an integral part of society, but children were not born slaves. Slaves were used for personal service or to provide labor for the construction of monumental architecture or to provide labor for the expansion of agriculture. So in one sense, we need to use caution when we identify pre-Columbian societies as having slavery. The trade in slaves was a trade of equals. Slaves were accorded rights. Many times if one could not meet subsistence needs, you found a person with surplus whom you contracted with and you enslaved yourself. But what will happen once Columbus initiates what will be known as, quote unquote, the age of exploration through contact and conquest is that Europeans in their search for markets, Europeans in their search for wealth and labor forces will introduce a new kind of slavery. A slavery that will include raping Native women, a slavery that will include raping African women, and then Asian women. This is a slavery that will be identified as racial, a slavery that will be identified as perpetual, and a slavery that will become hereditary. So again, racial, perpetual, and hereditary. And this will take 100 years by which to develop. This slavery is very important for us to appreciate. Now, ancient societies, prior to contact, tolerated slavery. But Europeans, in their quest to reach historical magnificence, will form and control Native American and African labor forces by introducing racialized slavery through contact and conquest. Native Americans and Africans will be dehumanized and racialized through contact and conquest. This is the racism. This racism is our modern sickness today. And you can see it in the current presidential administration. It just spews from their mouths. But let's go to Christianity, a documentary called Christianity, the Second 1,000 Years, to understand and appreciate this racism.